Where did you meet Frank?
I met him at a works dance. I was working at a hospital, and a friend who was a colleague knew I was having a tough time, and she said, why don't we have a night out? Come along and I'll introduce you to my Frank. She called him my Frank.
Which is quite telling when you think about it.
Yes, it is, yes. I say in the book that she wore him like a badge, and that was the effect he had. But he was her boyfriend's boss. So what's not to, it's not someone you've met on the street.
You met him, you fell for each other. So at what point, using hindsight now, because this is all part of our discussion, because you didn't know, but at what point did he begin to control?
Well, right from the beginning, actually. And that's the thing about coercive control, is that it's small things that don't amount to much on their own. So that first night, we went on to a club, and when he went to get the coats, I was talking to a man when he came back with them, and he said, "Oh, I can't leave you on your own for a second," which is, said it with a smile.
That's the first time you...
That's the first time, yes.
Yeah. And there was other signs, really, and you say alarm bells should have been ringing. I mean, he insisted on going through your wardrobe and getting you to try on every item of clothing, and he'd decide what was appropriate for you to wear.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with coercive control, is that it is a pattern of behaviour. And what struck me about all the women that I've spoken to since who've been through this, and I've heard from a lot since I published the book, is how startlingly similar the pattern is in almost every case. It's that sort of sweeping you off your feet, then it's the suggestion that you might improve yourself a bit if you only listen to him, and then that slowly turns into control. But by the time that's happening, you've fallen so much in love with this man that and it sounds like he's making suggestions to improve you.
He's very charming.
Yes.
Hugely charming. And you thought he was and flattery. I mean, you said when you'd go to a restaurant and you'd order a meal, I mean, he said, ladies should never decide what they have to eat. And you're like, oh, beautiful. OK, well, then I won't do that.
Hindsight.
So that meant that he was ordering your food?
Yes.
What other influence did he exert?
Well, I've been remembering things since I wrote the book, actually, because you bury this stuff because you're ashamed of it. And I remember things like leaving home to go to work on the bus, and he would phone me when I got into the office, and if I was 5 minutes late, why weren't you at work? And he, when there was a works dinner, I asked his permission, because by the time that was happening, I wasn't doing anything without asking him first. And to the outside, that looks completely normal, that you would say, well, I've been invited to this, is that okay with you? And that's a normal relationship thing. But then he would turn up outside the restaurant and phone me while I was inside, "Where are you?" And I think, well, you know where I am because you're outside on the pavement. The awful thing is that although I've said that it doesn't leave bruises, it does eventually progress to violence.
Well, he was wearing your confidence down.
Yes, the chip away, drip, drip, drip.
But explain when you say that you were a frog. What does that mean?
That I put that at the beginning of the book because it seemed to me, it's a well-known quote, but it seemed to me the best way to describe it. If you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, like you do if you get into a hot bath, you just leap straight out again. But if you put it in warm water and then heat it up gradually, the frog doesn't notice, and it just lies there and it boils to death. And that seemed to me a very good analogy.
So the scary thing about this relationship is that, you say yourself, you didn't fit into that stereotype of a sort of an easy prey for an abusive man, if you like.
No.
So it could happen to anybody. Anyone could find themselves in this situation.
Yes.
And so how do you get out of it? How do you even realise you're in a coercive relationship?
That's the really hard thing, and I sort of escaped more by luck than anything else, because his work moved him back to France. So I had some time on my own. He was still controlling me from another country. He'd phone and he left me these very intensive gym regimes, and he told me, actually, something else I remember, that there was a camera in the flat. And he could watch me.
Well, he told you that you weren't allowed to wear slippers at home because it was...
No,
you had to wear slippers because you couldn't wear bare feet because it was disgusting. That you could only ever have one glass of wine. That you had to answer the phone before the fourth ring. All of those sort of things. This massively controlling thing. So now you believe that there could be a camera in the house. past?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem unreasonable to think that when I knew by then how obsessive he was